also weekly basis, a lot of sell pressure up in this range. We can see that very clearly with our order block detector. And so, who's doing it, why that's happening, we can speculate all day long. However, this is rejecting here in this sell block around 90K. We can also see it on the 1 hour, 4 hours, very clear. So I'm just going to hop over to this. Solana's looking fairly good. I'll get to that in a minute. But these big sell blocks, let me just clean this up, open it up a bit. I know that's a lot of spaghetti on the screen. Sorry about that. But these sell areas right around 88K, 90K, even back towards March 25th has been this heavy sell block area. And this is where the sellers are lining up. Who they are, we don't know. These are not over the counter. These are bigger players or retail with limit sell orders in these ranges. Maybe the shorts piling in, but that 88K level has been tougher since all the way down. We have some mild support right here, but it's not really looking that strong. Certainly, if we go down to that 70K area, there's more buyers in line in that area. I hate to simplify it that much. And certainly as a 25-year trader, you wouldn't want to believe that something like these buy-sell blocks have or could be so accurate, but they really have been. And it's sort of keep it simple, stupid. Each time we got up in these sell blocks, it's sold off. It's one reason I sold the last Bitcoin I had at 106. And I've been waiting. I want to see this come out of a green zone or at least some validation above the 50-day exponential moving average. That's kind of the ice on the lake. The thick ice, if we're above the ice, it's good. We can bounce off of it. But once we break down under the ice, sometimes we can get back above it. But often it's early signs that we're drowning and then we can't get back above that. And certainly when it coincides with a downtrending parallel channel and these sell blocks, all these heavy sell orders. I don't know who they are again, but they are there, and it doesn't matter really who they are. The ideal scenario, aside from the fact that it would take us lower, the ideal buy zone would be right down here around 71K, in my opinion. Probably wick down to 70K. Will we get there? I think, as much as I hate to say it, I think we could. So with that in mind, there are some very bullish scenarios, and I shared one with Mike earlier. Some of you guys have know Camel Finance, and he's got some pretty good intel and TA. However, even he says, look, we're barely holding on right now. And he's bullish, but I really don't know. And I wish I could say, if we can hold here and go higher, like the chart that Mike showed on that longer term trend and break out of that, then we have hope. But if we start breaking down to 70K, things are starting to look pretty ominous. So I don't want anyone to panic. It's just, it's really a tough call right now. We have this kind of, this wedge here, a symmetrical wedge. We are putting in higher lows, hopefully, on Bitcoin, but also in this downtrending channel. The ideal scenario always is to identify a new uptrending channel sooner than later. And it's, it's still possible this is happening, but with all this tariff uncertainty, and global uncertainty, hard to count on that. So I'm out. I'm actually out of Bitcoin. I'm only buying very selectively. Solana, I have been buying, looks a little stronger. I'm really avoiding all the altcoins, the majority of altcoins, because I don't think they really run until later. Do want to take a minute to talk about Solana because it's been very good. And especially in this 125 range, in the opposite of the red sell blocks, these buy blocks all the way through here. You guys may have heard me say I've doubled my Solana in my IRA by trading, buying in the green around 125 and selling on pumps, buying in green, selling on pumps. If I were to simplify trading in a nutshell these days, I'd say buying green, selling red. There's some nuances to that, but for some of these coins, they have their own personalities. Clearly, there's a lot of buy support in this 125 range. Guys, I'm not perfect either. I bought more Solana at 130 on yesterday's pump, watching this, saying this is going to go, but also juggling, running classes and doing work and managing a team. I wasn't able to really check in with my spidey sense. But I also said, look, we could reject here on Bitcoin and Sol and come back down, so don't get too excited, which we did. But I also had previous buy limit orders in at 125, which filled 2 days ago, and at 120, which sold last night. So my net on Sol on the last 24 hours is I bought some at 130, I bought some at 120, still at my 125 ideal entry range. We're down here about 120 now, so I just actually put in another buy order at 110. This whole DCA buy zone, even though the narrative is they're starting to sell, there's a lot of unlocks happening. And from the FTX bankruptcy, some big hedge funds came in. They bought a whole bunch of Sol from the FTX bankruptcy at around $64. And so they have big unlocks this month and next month. But the markets tend to front run these things. And I think a lot of this dump from 300 all the way down to where we are around now 115 makes Sol pretty attractive. And, regardless, I have learned to trust these zones, not financial advice, for you guys, but I can do it one to many. I would suggest considering buying in this zone. We have overlapping buy zones here and, certainly kind of seeing how things play out. My stop loss is at 109. If things kind of start to melt down, I'll be out and I'll be looking for lower entries and buying into strength. So taking a little bit of a risk here, trying to catch a falling knife. And so this has now been invalidated. We were putting in a higher low, so I'll just take that out. So as long as we're in this downtrending channel, it's not looking great. We are oversold on the daily and weekly, however, and one of the things that really preempts and precedes a major move higher is when we see the weekly and daily start turning up, especially on our trend strength indicator. But after the last couple days, our signal line has turned red. It was green a couple days ago. Things are starting to look up. But as we know, things can change quickly, and we want to wait for confirming indicators, not just in the middle of it, but daily closes and weekly closes. And so we have, again, and I'm just using Sol as an example and a surrogate for many of the alts, heavily oversold down here, which is good. It's a great place to be buying for when it changes. The bad news is, if we go back in time all the way over here in December of 2021, we can bounce around in this zone for quite a while, and we can see sort of bear market rallies. And so we have to kind of keep that macro in mind and realize that that's going to dictate where everything does go. I will be watching closely, and I have alerts set for Solana on the weekly time frame on a closing basis to go above 20. That's one of our huge buy zones and buy triggers, along with some of the other things that we're watching. So I'll keep you posted. It's certainly frustrating, certainly disappointing. What I'm looking for specifically, and again, using Sol as a near-term surrogate, is not to buy and just hodl from here. I think that if we see a rally out of that zone, I'll be selling it in the 160 to 170 area in this red box, waiting for another correction, which may be doldrums all summer. The big money goes away when in May, or sell in May go away. Wall Street is, or Bitcoin is largely a Wall Street product now. And so I just don't see a lot of fireworks happening this summer. The name of the game for us, even though this is retire rich, is kind of take profits when we have them. DCA buy on pullbacks. We're still in that kind of a market. At which point, though, and I do believe and agree with Arthur Hayes and everyone else that we could see a rip-roaring rally going into the end of the year. It's just maybe shifted 2 or 3 months because these tariffs. And, in retire rich, I'd sort of proposed this a year ago that we'd see a pump and a kind of recessionary dump and then a second rally, kind of like 2013, just pure spidey sense. The problem is I was off on the timing. We kind of had that going into December, thought we would continue into January, and we didn't. So the question is, what happens next? Nobody knows, but we'll be watching carefully. So no real buy recommendations here. I would suggest to, coins that you want to DCA into that you may be holding, carefully looking for these zones. Hey, this is Brett from Moonstream. If you'd like to learn more about our pro trading signals or our live classes every Wednesday or our Retire Rich program, go over to moonstream.io/start.